Hari Om. Can you hear me? Geeta, you can start.
Yes. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Can you hear me well? Because I've used a different mic. I'm testing.
Yeah, perfectly clear, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshini Bhagavatim Ashtadashaadhyayini Ambat Tvamanusandathami Bhagavad-gita Bhavadveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullaravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapanaya Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamrita Duhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Geetamritam Mahat Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Bhishmadronatata Jayadratha Gandhara Nilotphala Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani Karnena Velakula Ashwathama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhana Vartini Sotirna Khalu Pandavairana Nadi Kaivartaka Keshavah Parasharyavachah Sarojamamalam Geetarthagandhotkattam Nanakhyanakakeram Harikatha Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Shajjana Sajjana Shatpadairaharaha Pepiyamanam Muda Bhuyad Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradhvamsina Shreyase Mukam Karoti Vachalam Panghum Langhayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sanga Padakramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavasthita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Yasyantam na vidussura suraganaha Devaya tasmai namaha Hari Om.
We'll just give 2 minutes. We are a little ahead. Sadashivasamārambhāṃ Shankarācārya-madhyamāṃ Asmadācārya-paryantāṃ Vande Guru Paramparaṃ. Param varishtham brahmishtham paramanandarupinam paramarthanandayatim sadgurum pranatosmyaham. After describing the universe in the first 3 shlokas, Lord Krishna pointed out that a spiritual seeker can transact with the universe and use the universe for spiritual growth, but one should never emotionally depend upon the universe for the sake of lasting peace, security, and happiness. So naturally, the question which will arise in our mind is, if we should not emotionally depend upon the universe, then on which should we depend? For that, Krishna's answer is, the universe has got a moolam, urdhva moolam, which has been introduced in the first shloka. So the root or base of the universe is Brahman or Ishvara, and that Brahman alone can be a permanent source of peace, security, and happiness. Therefore, we have to learn to depend on that Brahman, but that Brahman is not easily accessible. Just as the root of the tree is not visible to our sense organs, similarly, Brahman or Ishvara, the root is not Indriya Gocharam. Okay, so we call it Indriya Agocharam. Therefore, we have to seek and find that Brahman, and then the natural question is, what are the disciplines that one should follow? Is there really any discipline that one should follow to know that Brahman, the Adhishtanam, the base of the universe? So Krishna then went on to prescribe 4 disciplines. The first discipline is asangatvam, right, or vairagyam, detachment, learning to emotionally detach from the world. It's not that easy. It requires quite a bit of training. And the second discipline that Krishna prescribed is Sharanagati, or surrender to the Lord, because we require not only our efforts, we require the grace of the Lord also, because spiritual journey is an uphill task, right? So just as you have this train which climbs up these mountains, either in Kodaikanal or Ooty, or even in, say, Switzerland, right? And then it requires 2 engines, one it we push from the front and one from behind, right? Similarly, spiritual journey also requires 2 engines. One is our own effort or free will. Uddared atmanatmanam, Krishna said, right? And of course, we need Ishvara's grace also to push from behind. Therefore, Sharanagati, which was called Jignasu Bhakti in the 7th chapter, right? The devotion of a spiritual seeker is important. So, the well-known prayer of Shankaracharya, Annapurne Sadapurne, Shankara Prana Vallabhe, Jnana Vairagya Siddhyartham Bhiksham Dehime. Right? So, the second one is Sharanagati, and the third one, right? Last time the third one was mentioned as the 4th one, but it is important that the third one comes ahead of the 4th one. So I'm saying third. The third one is the Daivi Sampat, that which we are going to see in the 16th chapter, or we can call it the values, right? Divine virtues which provide the ambience for the spiritual growth, and also avoiding the Asuri Sampat, the unhealthy habits which will hinder the spiritual growth. So make the mind a garden, and just as a gardener regularly, visits the garden and nourishes the plants, right? And removes the weeds, right? Make the mind a beautiful garden. As I'm speaking, I'm reminded of, I don't remember the exact verse, maybe in one of the classes I will give you. I think it's verse 27 or no, I think it's 47 of Shivananda Lahari. I will check and let you know. A very beautiful verse. in which Shankaracharya prays to Shiva, and he says, my mind is actually like the, the forest where there are so many wild animals, and it's such a beautiful place for the hunter, because wherever he hunts, he will find some game in it. So, oh Lord Shiva, please, come to my mind, and you use your hunting prowess to pick all of them out of my head, right? Out of my mind. Very beautiful verse. Maybe in one of the classes, I will actually pick that up and speak about it and introduce that. I think it's verse 47, because I just suddenly remembered. I thought I should write down, but I haven't. Very beautiful verse. So similarly, we pray to the Lord to make our mind clean of all the Asuri Sampat, and we pray for the Daivi Sampat's progress, right? So, nourishment of the values is the third one. Asangatvam, Sharanagati, and then Daivi Sampat. And of course, the fourth one. These three are supportive ones. The fourth one is Jnanam, right? Knowledge on its own won't come from detachment, right? So, knowledge will not come from Sharanagati. It will not come from values also, right? So if we remember the 4th chapter, the 34th verse, Tadvidhi pranipadena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. So Krishna says, may you gain that knowledge, jnanam, by prostration, by service, and by proper inquiry. The wise sages will impart knowledge to you. So what happens is, this is very important, so I thought I must share with you. It's very important to develop reverence and respect towards the Guru. And also our Hindu tradition, right, promotes Sashtanga Namaskaram for exactly for this reason. Because whatever be the age, when the person is a Guru, you are prostrating to the Guru Shastra, Guru Parampara, basically, right? So it is very important, and Swamiji says in the ashrama, initially the Westerners find it very difficult to prostrate in front of the Guru. But by repeatedly doing that, they are able to, get assimilated into our culture. This comes naturally to right from childhood in the Hindu families, right? But prostration and Sharanagati to the Guru first becomes very important, because jnanam can be assimilated only if that reverence is there, right? So prostration, service, as well as proper inquiry, right? All of them are required for gaining that knowledge. So tat vidhi pranipadena, right? Pariprashnena sevaya. So Lord Krishna used two words for Jnana Yoga earlier. One, he said parimarganam, parimargitavyam refers to Jnana Yoga. And another word Krishna used was adhyatma nitya. So these two words indicate Jnana Yoga. Thus, with supportive disciplines and the pursuit of knowledge, a person becomes spiritually enlightened. And he discovers Brahman, and a result of that jnanam, he becomes one with Brahman, which is also referred to as Aikyam, or he merges into Brahman. So Krishna has talked about this in the 13th and 14th chapter. He is reminding in the 15th chapter, and that definition is Jnana Swarupaha. Chaitanya Swarupaha is Brahman. It is the nature of the all-pervading consciousness principle, which is present in everyone and which alone is conscious or aware of everything. So it is the external experiencer of, it is the eternal experiencer of all and never an object of experience. Consciousness is an eternal experiencer. It is ever the subject, right, of, and it is never an object of experience, because the subject can never become the object of experience, right? So with the pair of eyes, you can see everything in this world except the pair of eyes itself, themselves, right? So exactly like you will not ever be able to call your phone number from your phone, right? Similar to that, right? So the subject can never become an object. Therefore, Atma, Brahman, the Chaitanyam can never be an object, right? We must remember that, right? And a jnani discovers and merges into this, and after which there is no question of coming to samsara. So yad gatvana nivartante we saw. So that's the phalam or benefit of following the 4 disciplines in the form of Brahman, right? Aikyam has been mentioned in this shloka number 6, which we completed in the last class. And I talked about the source of this shloka, which comes from Kathopanishad, right? Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam nema vidyuto bhanti kutoyam agnihi tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. So this was the verse that we saw. And very important point here is, I'll come back to this. Yad gatvana nivartante taddama paramam mama, right? My supreme abode. Okay? It is my supreme abode, attaining which they do not return. So after the next verse, we will revisit what this is meant. My supreme abode, attaining which they do not return. So what is my and what is this abode that Krishna is mentioning, right? So we'll go to verse 7. Mamaivansho jivaloke Mamaivansho jivaloke Jivabhutas sanatanaha Jivabhutas sanatanaha Manashashtanindriyani Manashashtanindriyani Prakritisthani karshati Prakritisthani karshati. So, in the following verses, Lord Krishna points out a very important fact. Brahman, in its original nature, is the consciousness principle, which is not available for any influence of knowledge, and therefore it is called transcendental or absolute reality, this consciousness principle. So, Brahman or consciousness is called the transcendental or absolute reality, and in Sanskrit it is referred to as paramarthika satyam, right? I've referred to this many times, but it is very important to remember that Brahman is referred to as paramarthika satyam. It supports, but it is not available as one of the objects, right? If you want an example, when a person in the dream asks a question to another person in the dream, right? Imagine an enlightened person. Within the dream, the conversation is taking place, and the dreamer asks the question, who is supporting this dream world? The dream living being and the dream mountain, rivers, all of them, right? I see all of these things here. This is a dream, huh? And this, I myself in the dream is asking this question. Who is supporting all of this? And the dream guru says, there is a waker, and the waker alone lends support to the dream world. The guru is telling, right? So he is the very base, root or support. Then the dream shishya, right, asks, in which part of the dream I can see the waker? In which part of the dream I can see the waker? The waker will not be one of the participants in the dream world. Where is he? He is on the bed, right, in the cot, sleeping. The waker, the supporter, will not be available as one of the members. Even though he supports the dream, he is not a participant in the dream. Therefore, from the standpoint of the dream world, the waker is what? The waker is transcendental reality. Waker is there, but not one of the participants in the dream world. Similarly, Brahman is the transcendental reality, right? And that Brahman is available as consciousness, right, in the transcendental world. And how can that Brahman be recognized? Krishna says that the transcendental Brahman is available in the transactional world, but in a different form or version, right? What is that? So Lord Krishna says our own body-mind complex is made up of matter. Body does not have life of its own because it is made up of matter. Mind does not have the sentiency of its own because it is also made up of finer, subtle matter. And in the body-mind consciousness, the original Brahman is available in a different form, right? which we call the reflection or manifestation. The original Brahman is available in the body mind, right, as reflection or manifestation. We studied all of this in Tattva Bodha. Just as the sun in the sky is available down on the earth in every reflecting medium like mirror, water body, the original sun is available in reflected form. On a Paurnami night, the sun, even though invisible, is available on the moon in what form? In the form of moonlight. So moonlight belongs to whom? Right? It doesn't belong to the moon. Even though we call it moonlight, we know moon does not have a light of its own, but moon is capable of reflecting the light. Thus, every mind in every body serves as a reflecting medium. Mind is made up of extremely fine and subtle matter, and because of the fineness of the mind is able to capture the original consciousness in the form of reflected consciousness. In Sanskrit, we call this Pratibimba Chaitanyam. So the Bimba Chaitanyam is the original consciousness or transcendental consciousness. Pratibimba Chaitanyam is reflected consciousness or empirical consciousness. So in every mind, you will have a reflected consciousness. So as many bodies are there and those many minds are there, and each mind carries Pratibimba Chaitanyam. And Pratibimba Chaitanyam is empirical transactional consciousness. That alone is now available in the body also, right? And which is available in every other body, right? So when we pinch, we feel that consciousness. In a dead body, this consciousness is not available, right? We feel it in a live body, right? But not in a dead body. The mind borrows consciousness and the mind lends consciousness to the body. From the OC, the mind borrows consciousness and the mind lends consciousness to the body. Thus, the mind has got RC, right? And if you remember Introduction to Vedanta, where I covered Tattva Bodha, you will be familiar with this. So, the mind has got RC, and because of which the body has got RC, therefore we are all alive now. It is because of the reflected consciousness that comes from Brahman, we are all alive. Just as the dream individual borrows consciousness from the waker, similarly, we, the wakers, borrow consciousness from the super waker, Brahman alone. And he alone is available in every living being as sentiency. And that is what is called jivatma. Paramatma is transcendental consciousness. Jivatma is transactional or empirical consciousness. So the transcendental consciousness is OC, transactional consciousness is RC. Thus every mind has got an RC. That alone makes the body a live body, right? How long the body will be alive? As long as the mind, right, is there in the body, that is the mind that borrows consciousness and makes the body alive. As long as that body and that mind and body are there together, right, the body will live. The mind, which is with the borrowed reflected consciousness, along with the body, as long as they are there together, then the body will be alive. So as long as prarabdha karma is there, right, the body will live. When the karma ends, the prarabdha karma, the mind quits this physical body, right? When we say mind quits, you must remember, we are not referring to the brain. We are referring to the Sukshma Sharira mind with Chidabhasa, that's the reflected consciousness. And that quits the physical body, and therefore the body becomes a dead body, right? So in a dead body, right, the mind with reflected consciousness will not be there, and it will travel from one body to another body, and whichever new body the mind occupies, that body will become sentient. Thus, in the form of so many chidabhasas, right? The consciousness, Brahman, is available in the form of so many reflected consciousness or chidabhasa. Exactly like the Surya Bhagavan is only one, but if you have 10 mirrors, then you can see 10 reflected suns there. Similarly, paramatma is ekaha, jivatmas are infinite in number. Even a plant has got the mind. Kathopanishad says that Sukshma Shariram, but in a rudimentary form, and that is why a plant is sentient. Thus, wherever living beings are there, Jiva is there, and that Jiva is reflected Brahman only. Therefore, Krishna says, I, the original Brahman, am in everyone in the form of Jiva or reflected consciousness. Right? Now look at this shloka. Very, very important shloka here. Mamaiva amshaha. Amshaha here means reflection, pratibimbaha. I am like the original Surya, and every person is like a mirror. I alone enter every mind in the form of reflected consciousness, and that is called anupraveshaha. So I enter every mind in the form of reflected consciousness, which is called jivaha. So mamaivamshaha, my own reflection, jivaloke, in the transactional world of living beings. Right? Original Brahman is not available for transactions. It is avyavaharyam. Right? In Mandukya Upanishad, we will see the definition of avyavaharyam means it is not available for transactions. Right? So this is original Brahman. But as RC, it is available. Right? Jiva Bhutaha. Each reflection is called Jiva Chaitanyam. So Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha. This Jiva, which is associated with the mind, right? So the physical body will die, but the Jiva with the mind does not die at all. So when the body dies, the Jiva will go to, right? If you remember, in the 14th chapter, we saw Urdhvam Gachanti Sattvasthaha, Madhye Tishtanti Rajasaha, Jaganya Guna Vrittastaha, Adho Gachanti Tamasaha. So the Jiva with the reflecting mind goes to several lokas according to, right, their karma. Even during pralayam, the Jiva does not die. It only goes into the Karana Shariram. So the Jiva arises from the Karana Shariram, manifests as Sukshma Shariram, and then of course the Stula Shariram is created, and again it travels. And all the travel happens because of what? Bhagavan, that is Brahman, is present in the mind in the form of the reflected consciousness. And therefore Krishna says, this Jiva alone, at the time of Maranam, at the time of death, right? It is draws out. Karshati means draws out, extracts out the Sukshma Shariram, the inner invisible body. The visible body is somewhat like the hardware, you can think, right? So, and the Sukshma Shariram, you can think as the software part, right? So, the mind has to be put into the physical body, then alone the mind can experience, function, etc. Mind by itself will survive the death, but cannot transact after death. So transaction requires another mind and another stool. It requires another body, right, in which it can manifest, right? So this is what is said here, manaha, the mind, which is called Sukshma Shariram, which includes prana, the pancha prana, that is prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana, the pancha jnanendriyani, pancha karmendriyani, all of them, right? That is what forms the Sukshma Shariram, right? So please revise the introduction to Vedanta portion on Sukshma Shariram, Stula Shariram, etc. Right? So in the dead body, the physical one is there, the hardware is there, but the software or the Sukshma Shariram is gone. So Indriyani Prakristani. Prakriti here means physical body. We have to note carefully because Prakriti has a lot of meanings. The contextual meaning of Prakriti here is physical body, right? And the Jiva pulls, right, according to the law of karma, and whatever be the next bunch of karma that is maturing, based on the Sanchita karma that is getting matured. The next maturing bundle is called Prarabdha karma, and that Prarabdham will decide whether the next body should be a human body, a male body, a female body, an Indian body, a Japanese body, right? Different bodies, different feature, or maybe animal, plant, etc. Because it is zigzag. You can go from any loka to any loka, any jiva to any other type of jiva. Depending upon the karma, from human janma, one can have animal or plant janma. In Kathopanishad, it is said, Yoni manye prabhadyante sharitvaya dehinaha sthanumanyenu sayanti yatha karma yatha sutam. So according to karma and upasana, the next body can be any body. And that is why our scriptures say, if you've got a human body and free will, please work for moksha. Because if you miss this opportunity, we don't know when the next opportunity will come, right? But Krishna also says, gives a consolation. If you attend Gita class, right, Krishna says, either you get moksha, or even if there is next janma, it will be human janma, and this environment, whatever environment it be, it will be conducive for spiritual growth. Therefore, attending Gita class also becomes important. Krishna says that, okay? Therefore, prakritistani indriyani karshati, right? Bhagavan, right, in the form of RC alone, is doing, RC means in the form of Jiva alone, is doing this job of actually plucking it and moving out from the body, right? Now, this is a very, very important aspect which Vishishta Advaitins used to interpret differently. Shankaracharya's Bhashyam talks about it, and so I thought I'll just spend a couple of minutes, nothing more. So here this Mama Eva Amshaha, if you see, what did I talk about here? I said it is the reflected consciousness. Therefore, it is part of the, it is the original consciousness. I shouldn't use the word part. It's the OC which is reflected, right? So here, if you see the previous verse, if you see, so my supreme abode attaining which they do not return, right? So here it is the reflected consciousness becoming one with the OC through jnanam, right? So it is the Aikyam talked about like that. Whereas if you see here, Mamaivamsho Jivaloke, the interpretation can be, yes, the RC, yes, I is getting into Aikyam with OC later on, or in this context, in this particular stanza, it is talking about the RC getting pulled away, right, along with the mind. But the point to be noted is Vishishta Advaitins use this to say it is Mama Amshaha, it is my part. So all jivas are part of me. So that's the interpretation that Vishishta Advaitins use. And Shankaracharya clearly says that it is reflected consciousness which is being referred to here. I just thought I will mention this, saying how the same words in different bhashyams, when Madhvacharya or Ramanujacharya, right, they can write it from, I don't know how it will work in Dvaitam, I haven't gone into that, but this particular verse lends itself very easily for interpretation in Vishishta Advaitam philosophy also, right? So Shankaracharya writes an elaborate commentary, taking the trouble to actually clear that misconception through his bhashyam here. Okay, so that's what I wanted to tell. 1 second, let me see. There seems to be some. Yeah, the way you explained why death happens, that some people are in coma for years. Is this because the prarabdha continues for those who die in accidents or untimely death? All of this, yes. As long as the prarabdha karma is not exhausted, we will continue to exhaust in this physical body. So earlier also, I think in Introduction to Vedanta or somewhere I said, it is like leasing the body. Bhagavan has given it to us. We give back the body to Bhagavan at some later point in time, right? And this time is dependent on when that lease value gets over, and the lease dollars, as Swamiji puts it, is prarabdha karma. So if the prarabdha karma requires a person to be in coma for many years, one has to go through that prarabdha karma. Okay. Continuing. शरीरं यदवाप्नोति शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यच्चाप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः यच्चाप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानि वाशयात् Vayurgandhani Vashayat. Here, Shankaracharya makes a note in his commentary. Right? Adi Shankaracharya has written commentary on all the important Vedantic works. Bhagavad-gita, he has written all the Upanishads, he has written Brahma Sutra, he has written not only commentaries, even independent works like Tattva Bodha, Atma Bodha, etc. Viveka Chudamani, he has done. Right? It's all immense service to the Vedantic community, right? Even with Sanskrit dictionary, we can't understand, for instance, the meaning of Prakriti. Only contextual meaning helps, right? So now in this shloka, he makes an observation, Shankaracharya. In the first line, there is the second half, the later half, but what is that? Yachapi utkramatishvaraha. That part of the shloka must be physically moved as the first part, right? And connected to the previous shloka. He makes this comment, right? So he says in the commentary, so Ishvaraha yada utkramanti, right? That must be connected to the previous shloka, which means God in the form, right, of jiva while switching the body, right? That you have to connect and say Ishvara is original consciousness, which is in the form of reflected consciousness in the physical body, and it drags all the mind and sense organs at the time of death. Utkramanti. So you have to connect it with the previous verse. At the time of death, Ishvara means paramatma, right, in the form of jivatma, the reflected consciousness. Ishvaraha jiva rupena, right, in the form of Chidabhasa, RC rupena, marana kale, right, at the time of death, right, draws the mind and sense organs, and then this jivatma goes in search of the appropriate body. Not only according to karma, but according to our deep desires also. Desires also influence our next janma, depending upon karma, vasana, kama, desires, etc. They're all propelling fuels, right? And based on that, it will definitely influence our next janma, right? So whenever you are traveling, right, if you're going to a place, if your mind is dwelling towards movies, it will take you to a movie house. If you want to go to Vedanta class, it will take you towards that auditorium where the class is happening, right? So the desire is a very strong influencer on the kind of janma that one has, right? So the body has been dragged by the desires. So Vedanta says our strong desires will determine, and not only desires, vasana, the next bunch of prarabdha, etc., will decide not only the direction of travel, but the type of loka, right? And some general curiosity is how long will it take for the next janma, right? Now this also depends, right? So we don't know, right? Because the time and space coordinates are very, very different in different lokas, right? We don't know the duration at all, right? So when the body, the type of body changes, the time frame also changes. So in different environment, the time is different. An example of this is in the dream. In less than 1 minute, half a minute, we are able to travel the entire world and come back, right? So all this happens, right? So you can go all the way up to America, to Canada, and then you can come back, right? So it's less than 90 seconds and you're able to shop and get everything that you want in that time, right? So the jiva, we don't know, because the jiva travels and the lokas are all different, right? So the mind, sense organs, prana, they go to another physical body, And all the sense organs, all of them are packed very neatly and compactly, right? You can't see them. It's not visible, right? So it's all nicely packed, and then when the next house is ready, it goes to that house, right? You can treat it that way. But actually what happens is Jiva along with the Sukshma Shariram, basically the Chidabhasa, the reflected consciousness, and the Pancha Karmendriyani, Jnanendriyani, Manaha, Pancha Prana, etc. Right? They all move, right? So that is why sometimes, we do experience this. The eyes have to be resting in the proper physical location of the eye. That is the power of the eye. The power of the ear has to reflect in the actual physical location of the ear, right? Otherwise, apparently there is a medical condition called synesthesia or something, where the organ gets confused and it goes into different places. I really don't know. It appears so bizarre. But basically, the eye power has to connect with the physical eye, because we believe that the Sukshma Shariram, the eye power, is blessing that physical location of the eye, right? That is why the eye is able to see, right? And that is available, that is being told in Kena Upanishad also. We'll see that verse, right? So therefore, Jiva basically places all the Indriya power or software. I'm using that term so that you will be able to relate, of Jnanendriya, Karmendriya in the appropriate places, and the hardware or the physical location is called Golakam, right? So Indriyams are placed in the Golakams, right? So it is said here, Yat Shariram Avapnoti, when the Jiva takes the Sukshma Shariram to the next Stula Shariram, Etani Grihitva, all the organs are powered, right? But you cannot see them. So Jiva, the reflected consciousness, is also invisible. Sukshma Shariram is invisible. Mind is invisible, right? So you will not be able to physically see. And Krishna gives an example here, a very beautiful example. Like the wind, the invisible wind carrying the invisible fragrance. The wind carries the invisible fragrance of the fragrant flower, right? So you can smell the fragrance, right? So Vayuhu, like the invisible wind, right? Vayu must be equated to jivatma, and the Gandha refers to, right, all the rest of the life principle, right? So the life principle called prana, vasana, karma, everything, right? They are carried by the jiva, right? The chidabhasa, from one physical body to another. The physical body has the fragrance called life. So when the jivatma takes the fragrance away from the body, it becomes a dead body. So the family members keep our body in the house for how long? Only as long as the fragrance of life is there, the body is kept. When the jivatma takes the fragrance of life, prana, manaha, etc., the body becomes a dead body. And Shankaracharya says very, very, very stark truth. Even the dearest wife does not want to keep the body of the dearest husband, right? So while the person is there, yes, love, care, affection, all of them will be there. But disposal of the body at the earliest is what everybody wants, because the fragrance of life has been taken away by the invisible jivatma. Therefore, ashyat vayuhu iva savyati. Here what is important is jivatma, right, is alone, right? For instance, if you see here, uh, Jivatma is none other than Brahman, right? Reflected form in the mind, the image, right? Like you've got the photo of, say, a god like Venkatachalapati, even though it is not the real one, the original one is somewhere else, right? But you have that reference, you find the object sacred, right? So that's why sometimes in TV, when Deepa Radhana goes, you try to, you try to be very reverential towards the god, and sometimes you even feel like standing up, etc., right? And you touch the cheeks, right? Even though it is only a reflection, it is as sacred as the original. Thus jivatma is sacred because it is the image of the original Bhagavan, right? So Chidabhasa or jivatma is the image of paramatma and therefore as sacred as the paramatma, right? So that is what we have to note here. Okay, very important. So ashayat vayuhu iva sayyati. Vayuhu iva sayyati. So like the vayu, it is fragrant, and once the jivatma leaves the body, the fragrance is gone, right? So very important. And in the Bhashyam, Shankaracharya talks about a very, very important aspect. I thought maybe a few of you may be interested in that. So, in Brahma Sutra, there is a huge adhikaranam called Tadantara Pratipatti Adhikaranam. Basically, third chapter, first pada, first adhikaranam, 311, right? So, Tadantara Pratipattau Rambati Bhuta Sukshmaihi Prashna Nirupanabhyam Bhuta Sukshma, it comes in that sutra and the explanation, right? Basically, what is said here briefly, it's referring to a Chandogya Upanishad portion actually called Panchagni Vidya, where it says the jiva goes through 5 stages. In each stage, the next body becomes more and more functional, right? It says the jiva goes through after death, right? Swarga, Megha, Prithvi, Purusha, Nari, right? So Swarga is the first factory where it is baked, right? You assume that way, the Jiva. Then Megha, then Prithvi is a third category, Purusha is the fourth factory, and then the Nari is the fifth one. So the Jiva goes through all these 5, and then finally it comes in the body of the female, and it is using only the already acquired body. This is what Shastra says. Acquired not in the Stree alone. At the time of the previous death itself, that Shariram becomes full-fledged. Shariram Panchamyam Ahuto. Right? Apaha Purusha Vachasaha Bhavati. Chandogya Upanishad, Panchagni Vidya talks about this, right? So, Shariram Yada Apnoti. Right? How much time it will take, that we don't know in the 5 stations, right? You can call it 5 stations. How long does it stay everywhere, right? That we don't know, right? So, because our Masa, our Varsha and all are different as compared to the time scales of these different lokas, right? So, the moment the body is gone, we cannot discuss about our Kala or time frame, right? That is the point here. How long will it take for rebirth, etc.? We don't know, right? So, in our shloka, Sharirat, from one body which is dead now, that is what it says, Sharirantaram avapnoti, the next body it takes, and in his commentary, he talks about it in detail about these 5 different stations, etc. And if people who are interested, you can go to Chandogya Upanishad also and read the Panchagni Vidya section on this. Continuing. Shrotram chakshusparshanam cha Shrotram chakshusparshanam cha Rasanam ghranameva cha Rasanam ghranameva cha Adhisthaya manaschayam Adhisthaya manaschayam Vishayanupasevate Vishayanupasevate. Now, the Jivatma in the new hardware or the new physical body, right? The Jivatma, the empirical version, right? So, is present, right? Now the Jivatma is in the new body, right? Now, similarly, it says, there is a very important shloka here. This is compared, basically, Jivatma is like you're praying to say Venkatachalapati or some other god, right? It is the same Paramatma in this form. So, there is a very famous verse here. Deho Devalaya Prokta Jivo Deva Sanatanaha. The body, our body, is like a temple, and the mind is the Garbhagriham. And the consciousness available in the mind is none other than Jivo Devaha, none other than God. That's why in Hinduism, whatever be the type of person, our greeting is in the form of Namaste or Namaskara, which is, praying to the divinity in that person, Bhagavan in that person, right? So, because the basically even in the samsara world, the problems all belong to the sthula shariram or sukshma shariram. None of them belong to the jiva, the consciousness or chidabhasa, right? It belongs basically to the reflecting medium, right? And not to the consciousness itself, right? So in fact, in this time of coronavirus, if we had stuck to our standard namaste, it could have helped prevent a lot of this disease spreading also. So that is why in Hinduism we had this, and we used to always reverentially bow to the other person, the divinity in the other person, right? So the safest greeting is namaste, right? So therefore every live body should remind me of Bhagavan only. So wise people see jivatma as the image of paramatma, and the ignorant person does not know this fact, right? Therefore he misses the paramatma, and the wise person never misses the paramatma because he sees every jivatma, right, as paramatma. So Krishna says in every transaction of the life, right, it is evident that the OC is evident. And not only during the transactions, at the time of death also, what is it that vacates the body, right? We can always question that. It is jivatma, right? Which is again none other than the glory, the image of paramatma. And therefore, birth and death also reveal the presence of paramatma in the form of jivatma, right? And the jivatma takes the mind and sense organs from the physical body, right? Along with basically it's all the pancha prana, pancha karmendriya, pancha jnanendriya, manaha, buddhi, etc. And they're carried from one physical body which has become an empty shell, right? After it vacates, right? And it's ready for disposal, right? So as long as karma is there, the jivatma alone will be there in the body. Once the karma is over, the jivatma will leave the body, right? So both during life as well as birth and death, we see the presence of jivatma, which is otherwise the image of paramatma, right? So this is what he says here. Shrotram chakshus sparshanam cha. Shrotram means the ears, chakshu is eyes, sparshanam is the skin, the organ of touch, rasanam, the tongue which can taste, and granam, right, means organ of uh, uh, grasping, right? Granam is smelling, right? Adhishtaya. All of them are placed upon the appropriate golakam, and all of them mean the software part, basically the indriyam in the golakam, right? So the physical body is only the hardware, basically, which is the outer shell or the physical body. So the sense organs, the indriyam is the software, and they are placed in the physical body. And manascha, the mind, is located in the heart according to the Shastra. And placing the mind in the heart, vishayan upasevate, the jivatma experiences the world. And when the prarabdha karma is exhausted, gradually each sense organ becomes weaker and weaker. Eyes cannot see properly, ears cannot hear properly, right? And at the moment of death, gradually all these powers are withdrawn and brought into the heart. The dying person, the Upanishad graphically describes the frightening scene. So the person is lying down, and doctors have said that you can inform your relatives. One by one, the relatives comes. First, he recognizes the relatives and talks, and gradually the talking power goes. Even though the lips move, no sound comes. Therefore, he sees the relatives and recognizes and wants to transact, but is not able to. And therefore, the eyes recognize and tears come down. So the speech is gone, right? Now, I just picked up the extract from the Chandogya Upanishad. You can take a look at it, right? So I just marked it in orange also. Basically, it is talking about, let me just quickly read that out. Yeah. So it says around a dying person in Chandogya Upanishad 6:15:1. Around a dying person afflicted with illness, my dear, his relatives gather and ask, do you know me? Do you know me? He knows them as long as his speech is available, right? And then The speech goes to the mind, and then his mind gets into his prana, then his prana into heat, and then the heat, right? So Chandogya Upanishad talks about gradually, and then in the next shloka, next verse, it says, next mantra, but when his speech is merged in his mind in his prana in the heat, and the heat in the highest deity, then he does not know them. Basically, death occurs, right? So you can take a look at it later on. Very important section from Chandogya Upanishad, right? So 6, 15, 1, 2, etc. So it's the Udana Prana out of the Pancha Pranas, which is the last one which is functioning. And Udana Prana means it is the power to separate the mind and prana from the physical body. And that is what also keeps the warmth in the body. And finally, the Udana Prana lifts the Sukshma Shariram, the Karana Shariram, the reflected consciousness, and they all leave. And that's when the body becomes cold. So the rented house has been vacated for good, right? So the difference between other houses and this house is, other houses can be occupied by another tenant, but this one, once the jivatma vacates, it is no use, right? We have to, obviously cremate the body, right? So it is Bhagavan's property. It has to go back to Bhagavan, and jivatma, paramatma in the form of jivatma has left the body. That's why we say deho devalaya praktaha jivo deva sanatanaha. So during our lifespan, Bhagavan is occupying the body in the form of reflected consciousness, right? And once the reflected consciousness has quit the body, the Mangala Shariram, the auspicious body, has become inauspicious corpse. So that is why anybody visiting the house where there is a dead body, right, they go back and have a bath. So body is Mangalam as long as Bhagavan is residing. Body becomes Amangalam when the body, when Bhagavan leaves the body, right? So Shotram Shakshusparshanam cha Rasanam Granameva cha Adhishtana Manaschayam Vishayanupasevate. Right? Resorting to the ear, the eye, the skin, the tongue, and the nose as well as the mind, he experiences the sense objects. And once it quits, the person has died. Right? Continuing. Ukramantam stitam vapi Ukramantam stitam vapi Bhunjanam vagunanvitam Bhunjanam vagunanvitam Vimudānānupashyanti Vimudānānupashyanti Pashyanti jnana-chakshushaha Pashyanti jnana-chakshushaha. Here Krishna says every activity of the living being in general and every activity of human being in particular is an indication of the presence of God in the body in the form of the very jivatma, right? So, or RC. So whether I am breathing, right, which we take it for granted because it is happening involuntarily, right? It is, Swamiji says, breathing is so important. So whatever is important, Bhagavan has made it involuntary, right? Because we are not given the responsibility since Bhagavan doesn't know whether we are reliable. So breathing is involuntary, right? He's made it involuntary so that it happens naturally. Similarly, heartbeat. Heartbeat is the proof of Bhagavan's presence in the body. So every breath is the proof for Bhagavan's presence in the body. If I'm able to talk, it is Bhagavan's glory. If you're able to hear, it is Bhagavan's glory. And I have to add that if I'm able to understand, right, then that is also because of the Bhagavan's glory. Therefore, the wise people, right, they discern Bhagavan in themselves as well as in others. The ignorant, vimudaha, they don't recognize. Not only that, they ask the question, what is the proof for the existence of God, right? It's like experiencing the fan now or the laptop now and say, what is the proof for electricity, right? Exactly like that, right? So that is what Hiranyakashipu also asked Prahalada, what is the proof for existence of God, right? And the question itself is meaningless, right? So it is because of that very consciousness that we are even able to ask that question. So therefore Krishna says Vimudaha. Mudaha means non-thinking people, and Vimudaha is a even more special kind of fool, because the V is an upasarga for that, right? So Vishesha Mudaha. So these people ask for proof of God, and the very consciousness in their body is Bhagavan itself. So Vimudaha na anupashyanti. They don't recognize the Lord, because of whom all these activities are taking place, right? Sthitam, the presence of life in the body, and gunjanam, the capacity to experience the world, right? I can sense the surroundings, which, for instance, this inert chair or the inert desk cannot sense, right? So that sensing is because of Chaitanya Tattvam, which is Bhagavan. So Gunjanam, the sensing sentiency, the consciousness, and Gunanvitam, the experiencing of the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, right? Whether it is happiness, sadness, anything, stress, strain, everything, right? So the expression of that, experiencing that is Gunanvitam, right? So, and Utkramantam, right? So, and then the final experience of this leaving the body, being dead and gone. So when the life ends, that is also quitting. And that quitting evidence also is Bhagavan himself, right? So when body becomes inactive and all other people become more active, that is also an indication of Bhagavan only, right? So therefore, Ukramantam means quitting, right? That's the presence of Bhagavan, and quitting, Vimudaha na anupashyanti, right? And they get confused. So, Jnana Chakshushaha means people who have the eye of wisdom, right? Because the physical eye cannot see consciousness. We can only sense the consciousness by understanding, right? So, just as the physical eye see the fan, but only the intellectual eye recognizes the invisible electricity. So consciousness is like the invisible electricity which makes the body function, right? So that's the tattvam, right? So in Kenopanishad, if you see, there is a verse, Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Manoyad Vachoha Vacham Sau Pranasya Pranaha Chakshushas Chakshurati Muchya Dhiraha Pretyasma Lokad Amrita Bhavanti. Right? So in this talks about the wise people with the eye of wisdom who are able to recognize this fact. Right? So we'll stop here, and we'll continue with the 11th verse in the next class. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. In case you're interested in listening to Swamiji's New Year talk, it will be available on the 1st of January, right from the morning in any part of the world, right from Australia to US, their respective mornings, it should be available. And it will be available on yogamalika.org. Okay, yogamalika.org. You can listen to Swamiji's New Year talk, very interesting talk this year. And every year, of course, he talks about a general topic. So this year also he will be talking about it. And I also wanted to wish you all a very happy New Year. And let me just now see if there are any questions so that I can respond. Okay, there is only somebody who says it was informative. Okay, there are two hands raised. Prabhakar Rao, I know it was raised for quite some time. Please go ahead. I have unmuted you. You're self-muted, Prabhakar Rao. Okay. Gopala Venkateshwara. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Madam, can you comment on this prarabdha and this medical intervention?
Yeah. Prarabdha and medical intervention, let me put it this way. If your prarabdha requires medical intervention, it will happen with or without your free will. Okay. But if you see something that can help you and you are convinced, right? You have assessed the pros and cons of, taking a particular decision, you must go ahead, because Vedanta or Shastra never says that you should not use your free will till the very end. So you must go ahead, use your free will and intervene medically. I'm also saying that even if that doesn't happen and the prarabdha is very strong, the intervention will happen in any form, right? The intervention may be even in the form of keeping quiet and not doing anything about a person in coma, for example. So that person will also go through with the karma and exhaust. So free will, that is our own prayatna, must definitely be put forth after analyzing the pros and cons in all situations, not only medical situations.
Dhanyavad.
Dhanyavad. Any other questions? Okay, I know today's class had a lot of deep philosophical things and more about, death and other things, but I thought it was relevant. That's why I spoke about it. Okay, I think we don't have any other. Okay, there's another hand raised. 1 second. Yes, Radhika Krishnan, go ahead.
Ma'am, good evening. See, I just wanted to know your explanation. See, in the case of war or a natural calamity or a terror attack, the death comes instantly for a person, is it not? So there is no scope for degeneration of the organs and all that. How can we explain that?
This is also prarabdha only. See, there are some things which you can influence, which is what the law of karma says. The law of karma says that any action or any result is the result of two forces working. One is our prayatna, and the second is the karma, the prarabdha karma that is catching up with us. So even without anything happen, the person will pass away. That's all. In fact, there are certain lokas, I think I mentioned it, where the person never is born or never degenerates, never dies. He just appears and disappears. The Shastra talks about lokas of that nature. No jara, mrityu, etc. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, madam.
There's, I think, one more question. Let me just see. Okay, this is vicious. 1 second. There's one more question. Nilanjana, right? 1 second. Let me just switch your. Please go ahead, Nilanjana. I think you're self-muted. Nilanjana? Okay, I think she's self-muted. Okay. So, oh, you can't unmute? Go ahead now.
Yeah, so my question is, since we are on this prarabdha, see, there are some people who get hurt very deeply in life, like a child has died or, stuff like that. So that also prarabdha, because my question here is more from the fact that when somebody hurts us deeply, we, instead of looking at it as my prarabdha is hitting me, we normally blame the other person.
Yes. See, so, this is correct. Absolutely. And what Swamiji and Shastra say for this is very sad, okay? When you are leading a normal life, that is when we must listen to scriptures and get acclimatized to Shastra and understand the real significance of Gita and other things. What happens is, if we don't do it at peacetime, when such calamities hit, there is zero emotional strength to fall back on. Now, if you have actually seen people who have gone through Vedanta and who face difficult situations, they also face difficult situations. They are able to bounce back much faster than the others. But the sad part is, when people go through difficult situations, there is no way a spiritually mature person is able to do anything but just observe and just offer some kind of solace, maybe by just listening to the other person ranting out, because we understand what's happening. But I agree with you, I have seen people going through this, but you can't do anything about it at that time when you are going through the problem. The preparation for battling samsara has to happen when we are peaceful and we can absorb Shastra in the normal day-to-day life.
So when somebody, like somebody very close to me in the family has lost a child, so apart from, understanding, me understanding intellectually that this is that person's prarabdha that is possibly catching up, and there is no service that can be offered to somebody, whose, the child going to college has, died. So what
Correct.
is somebody who's undergoing a spiritual
You can,
course?
correct. What can you do, right? You
Yeah.
understand that the person has gone through a very, very bad situation. Now
Yeah.
the problem can manifest in many forms. The person can become very reserved. The person can lash out at every small situation, right? It can manifest in different forms. I just took two examples. If
Hmm.
we are spiritually mature and we are able to understand this, we can exhibit that extra emotional strength by being more tolerant, by lending a helping hand, by offering help where they can take. If nothing works, then just silence itself may work from our side, and just wait calmly and patiently for them to reach out.
Okay, that was a very good understanding. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
because I have actually, it is very strange that you asked me this. I have personally faced this problem with a very, very close friend of mine. And so I do understand. And best is to just let go and not get upset with the other person. And because sometimes they don't want to even see you, right? So we need to understand those situations. That's all, right? So, okay, there is another question here. I have a certain prarabdha. Can our present karma or good deeds change or influence our current life and future janmas? Definitely, right? But only thing is, as I said, the time frame is not known. So if you do good deeds, those good deeds may or may not fructify in this janma. We have to be prepared for it. The only known thing where we see written in the Shastras is when you study Gita, because Gita Mahatmyam we will be doing after completing 18 chapters, it says that a human birth is assured, right? That's the only place that it says so very clearly. Otherwise, there are some, karmas in the Karma Kanda where it says if you do this, you will have a child. If you do this, you will get money. Like Avahanti Homam, you will get money. So those are things where you do specific karmas, and if you do it 100% right, as per the ritual, then you can expect some results. Otherwise, in general, if you do good deeds, right, it will definitely add to your punyam account. But when will that punyam fructify? In this janma or later on, right? That we never know. But I just have one point, and I always feel that if our approach to life is this way, it will help. If we, at the end of our life, are net positive on punya, I think we should feel happy. That is giving more than taking. Then we have achieved something at the end of this life, and just move on, because we don't know the time frame when this punyam will fructify. I hope I've answered your question, Veena. Okay. Anyway, we will stop here, and next week we will meet. And once again, wish all of you a very, very happy New Year. Okay. Thank you. Dhanyavadaha.